Hey there, welcome back to Supercharged Fridays. We have an awesome show for you today. We're going to talk about all things interviewing and interview prep and how to interview prep so you calm those nerves and you calm the heck down because it is a struggle. And anybody who tells you that interviews are easy, and they wake up and they're like, "Yeah, I got an interview today. I'm so excited." Like they're weird, okay? That is not normal. I'm joking. No, I'm not joking. So we're gonna bring in the lovely Paula Christensen. But before we do that, if we haven't met before, if you're joining me from Paula's part of the world, welcome. So happy to have you here. My name is Sonal Behel. I'm a career strategist, and what I do is help people who are going through career transition, very similar to what Paula does. And the messier the career transition, the tougher the career transition, the more excited I get. Like that's my love language. And I do this through one on one coaching, through group coaching, through digital courses online, through my YouTube channel, through the podcast, and through this LinkedIn Live. I've been doing this every Friday for 3.5 years, haven't missed a single Friday. It's a lot of fun and a lot of learning. And I love bringing other career coaches on for two reasons. Number one, it's impossible to know everything. So it's really great to compare notes and see what other people are talking about. And secondly, it's great for the audience as well, right? You see another person, you see another face, and that helps enrich learning. And, overall, it's a win win. So without further ado, I cannot wait to welcome Paula Christensen, who's joining us from Wisconsin at 8 in the morning. Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sonal. It's actually 7 here. So it's
Oi, oi,
great.
you're on CST. So you were when you were on and you're looking like amazing and fresh. That was 6:45 for you when we did green room check.
You're so sweet.
Oh
Thank
my
you
God.
so much. I've watched this show so many Friday mornings, in my PJs with my bun, and so it's interesting to actually be cleaned up for it.
Yeah, great to have you. And if you got pages, not judging you, you know what? Yeah, that's one of the beauties of doing this. You can't see what's happening waist down, and that is for us to know and for you to find out. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm seeing some gorgeous comments. Some folks are up early morning. Thank you for being here. I'm going to give you a shout out, display it on the screen. But before we, get started with the topic, and what a juicy topic we have today, how to manage interview anxiety before it manages you. And Paula, we know it can manage us. It can lead, and we don't want it to lead. So, for anyone who's watching who's not familiar with you, or highly recommend first of all that you follow Paula on LinkedIn. Give me a sec, my cursor. Yeah, follow Paula right here. Her URL is right here on the screen. Follow her on LinkedIn. So Paula, tell us like a very brief, like 30-second backstory about your background and what you do today.
So I'm a former recruiter, and I loved it. I loved working there, but it's really cool to be on the other side now. I love just being able to help people. What I do mostly, so I started out my business being a career coach who did a little bit of resume writing, and now I do a lot of resume writing and a little bit of interview coaching. So interview coaching is kind of my passion. I love just helping people. I feel like just with a little bit of tweaking, some people can really do so much better. And some people just unfortunately, you don't get that feedback. So people are so appreciative of it. And I just really like being able to help. I think that's the theme that's kind of gone through my different careers in my life, is just wanting to help people. So love it. This is actually, like a lot of people I'm sure that you talk with, kind of like the culmination of a bunch of different things coming together for me at this point in my life. And it feels really fulfilling to be in the right spot, helping people and doing what I really like to do.
Yeah, and it shows. Paula, quick shout out to a fan. She's like totally fangirling you. I I want to say one thing before we get started, and I think this is very valuable to our audience right now. Like Paula, I'm talking about you like you're not in the room. The way Paula has just introduced herself and what she does. And I know the word passion gets thrown around a lot and gets misused and abused a lot. But when you are really in alignment and in that beautiful zone of genius where what you're good at and what you're love to do are in perfect like overlap, and you got that sweet spot, it shows. It comes across in how you introduce yourself, whether it's on a LinkedIn Live, on a podcast, networking event, or an interview. And there was a very interesting study I heard about a couple of weeks ago on a podcast, and they looked at the brain, and apparently the one emotion that is contagious is enthusiasm. No other emotion is as contagious because the amount of places where it lights up in the brain because of the neurotransmitters. Look how smart I sound when I just said that. No other emotion does that except enthusiasm. So, Paula, 10 on 10 here. So, love this. And I hope you don't mind me doing this, but every opportunity is an opportunity to learn and to get better. So, we just learned something from Paula that she didn't even know she was doing.
Well, and I think
So,
that ties into interviewing,
it
Sona. Like
does.
when you tell those stories, and if you are really in your zone of genius, even if that's accounting or auditing, or it doesn't have to be something like creative or anything outlandish, but when you're in that zone and you're telling that story in an interview, it comes across.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to, when I work with people on interview coaching, it's like I want them to be authentic. And usually that means just telling that story in what you really love to do and how you worked through it in your own way. And that, I think that's the connection piece right there with the neurotransmitters, like that you're actually in the story with them. So that's probably why that enthusiasm piece kind of gets
It
in
does.
there. It's
It does.
interesting. Hmm.
It does. And we want to talk to you about all things interviewing. And quick shout out because there's some people who not only fans, but they are president of the fan club of Paula Christensen.
Oh my
What is
gosh.
going on here? I'm feeling a little FOMO. I
Oh
want to
my
be in that.
gosh. I gotta go see
I
that.
want to be in that.
I
And
don't
I
know
have a
who that
former
is.
guest.
Thanks, Mom. I'm just kidding. Mom is
I'm,
not alive.
I'm sorry I missed it. We were talking over each other. Did you say hi to someone?
I was just looking to see who's the president.
Dan Roth. Dan Roth.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and a
He's
quick hello to Kola,
very
who's a former podcast guest and Supercharged Fridays guest of mine. So yeah, so much to talk about. I got a question for you before we get started because the questions are already coming in. Love the questions, guys. Keep them coming in. I might not address them right away, but this one is good. Even though I was thinking about this in the end. Mohib is asking, what would be some beneficial books according to you to manage interview anxiety?
I don't know. I saw that one come up. I'm like, I don't know if there's one specific for anxiety for interviewing, but I think what you could do is just actually find books on anxiety.
Hmm.
So like
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
does that, managing anxiety, and I'm sure
Hmm.
there's thousands of books there, just about breathing or about what you can do to, I mean, there's lots of interview prep books
Yeah,
that will help with your anxiety,
yeah.
but I don't know if there's one that is.
Yeah, Mohib, I think that when we ask something like this, it sounds like you need to do some work, but start with a very basic YouTube video, like listen to us today, see what you can get out of it, read a blog post before you go on to a book, because it might just be regurgitated information, right? So start with what you're going to listen today, and if there's still more, feel free to send me a DM. I'm sure there are lots of resources that I could share. So Paula, we've got like a certain order, right? You have a certain way of thinking. And I love this because I like step by step. So this like, it's like a wedding. It's like the week before, the night before, and then the day off, like D-Day. And we make such a thing of it. So let's say I'm told, right, today is 12th of May. I'm told I have an interview on the 17th. And I'm nervous. I'm nervous. Everything's fine, but I'm nervous. I'm prepping. That 16th night, I I'm dying. Is that normal?
I think, yes, that is normal. I think have some reassurance that you're not alone there. That everybody feels nervous, especially the night before, and you're going to get through it. Think of all the times you've done it before where you've been really nervous about something and it's turned out okay. So yes,
Okay.
you probably should be shitting bricks because there is a little, there is a lot on the line, and that is very normal. And
It is normal. It is
you can
normal.
manage it and kind of think about what's in your control. But I think the week before, what's really important is to practice out loud.
Let's talk about the week before. Okay. So today's 12th of May. I get an email from a recruiter, somebody who's watching us, and they're told, 19th of May is your first round of interviews, and you're going to be meeting with a recruiter and maybe a second, like a hiring manager, right? Two people, you've got an email, you've got a date and a time, maybe it's in person. That's WHO said last week, COVID is over. Let's assume it's in person, okay? Paula, what can we do? Let's focus on the realm in our control.
Yeah, I think practicing out loud is huge. So many people don't take it to that step. They might go through some questions up, in their head. They might write some things down, but actually practicing out loud for that smoothness and comfortability and really memory retention really makes a huge difference. So you really want to rehearse that out loud. It doesn't necessarily have to be with a coach, but you can record yourself on a one-person Zoom session. You can do it in the mirror. I think what's really important to remember here is that your body and brain will remember being down that path. So the more stressful situation you can actually put yourself through before you do it is going to make a huge difference when you're in the actual event, because your body and brain are going to remember, okay, I did something similar to this and I came out okay. And I remembered how to answer that. And even if you flub up, okay, I flubbed up, but I got through it. So putting yourself in as similar of a situation as you can is helpful. And sometimes what's helpful for people, before you even get to the practicing out loud stage, there are some tools online that you can use that kind of like, they count your ums and ahs, they check for keywords, and those are great. I think you should start there. They're really like not intimidating. But then move on to practicing out loud on video. And hopefully maybe with a real person. So it doesn't have to be someone you pay, but maybe a mentor or a friend or a relative who's going to give you some honest feedback.
Yeah, yeah. And Paula, I tell this to so many clients of mine to record or to do this in front of a mirror. It's very uncomfortable, Paula.
It is.
I don't want to do it. What do you say to that person?
I say do it anyway. So what I've been doing with some of my clients is having them record the questions in between our sessions. So sometimes they'll record 3 questions. So it's not a whole interview. You can pick any 3. Sometimes I assign the 3 and they record them and send them to me. And it's like getting more practice doing that. The more, like you, Sona, like you've done these lives for forever. So it's probably a lot easier for you than me. So just, yes, do it, because it's going to help your brain. It's going to help your body. Your body remembers that you've practiced this and done this. And it doesn't have to be perfect.
It probably never will be perfect, because if it's too perfect, it's like, what's going on here? Is the person masking, or they're trying to poke holes? They're going to see like what's going on. But the thing that nobody wants to hear is the hard work is the shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it. The thing about recording yourself on video is also you see immediate twitches, and we have certain quirks. All of us have, and some of them are embarrassing. So I have a quirk which is very embarrassing because I see myself on LinkedIn Live, and that is I blink a lot. I blink when I'm excited. I blink when I'm not excited. I'm normal and I'm just blinking. So I get comments on my YouTube channel. Is something wrong with you? Something in your eye? I look like a Barbie doll. I can't help it. It's involuntary. But now that I'm aware of it and I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, now I can blink. So if I didn't do that on video, I wouldn't have known that. So you just sort of fluttering. It could be you have a twitch. It could be that you itch, or it could be whatever. And we don't want that to distract from your amazing answers and amazing the candidate that you are, because somebody couldn't get over the fact that there was something that took away from the essence of your answers.
I have a client who she looked up a lot.
Especially when she's thinking?
Yes. And
I do that.
I said, I think that's good. I think I remember I was a psychology major in college, and I remember hearing like criminals and psychopaths and things like that. They look down when you're lying or when you're trying to be deceptive. And when you look up, it means you're thinking. And I told her, I said, I think it's good. It's not that you're being deceptive or anything, but something to be aware of. And I said, when you watch the video back, you'll watch that. And then another time when we met, she said, I've noticed myself doing that in meetings. And I've probably done it my whole life and I've never noticed it before until it was pointed out. So, yeah,
And
it's
it's not
tough.
about changing who we are, it's about
Mhm,
just being a bit more aware and
mhm,
making sometimes small tweaks can have a big outcome. So, this is really important what you're saying. And the other thing about practicing out loud with a video or a person is having an answer with bullet points is one thing. Having to articulate it into words that actually sound like sentences flowing and making sense is a totally different skill set.
mhm,
And the more you practice it, the better you get. And the best example for that would be like a TEDx,
mhm,
that they do. It's like, oh, do they have a prompter? Do they have a teleprompter? No, no, because they do know what's coming. And obviously, we're not saying read like a script. It's not the point.
mhm,
But it's just the thought process that's coming in, and you can see how comfortable or uncomfortable you look when
mhm,
somebody is looking at you. So that's great, and I love that you said there is lots of tools in there. In fact, we have an example of a tool. I know that LinkedIn has a
mhm.
amazing free tool online, and I had a guest on Supercharge Fridays, Gillian Whitney, who explained it in detail. But you also have other AI free and paid tools. Dan is talking about Udly, so that's
Mhm.
amazing.
Right. I've been hearing about that a lot lately. I believe maybe Dan could confirm this, but I believe Udly is verbal
Mm,
feedback,
mm,
feedback on your spoken word.
mm, mm. Not visual, you mean? Okay,
I'm not sure.
Dan
Maybe
will
he can
confirm
correct.
that. And Tegan says, I love we love hearing from you guys because you're sharing some of you are also coaches, right? So you're enriching the conversation here. It's amazing when you watch a replay of a mock interview and you realize what you said versus what you thought you said. Oh yes, for sure. And Joe says, often things that seem smooth and spontaneous, they actually come. That's such a good point. That is such a good point, Joe, that it sounds like it was sort of smooth, but you had thought about it for a while and the timing was perfect.
But sometimes
So,
people will ask me about practice, like how much should I practice? And should I rehearse my answers? And not word for word, that's not authentic. That's not going to create a connection.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like you said, Sonali, you should know the flow of it. You should
yeah.
know the story and what are the elements of the story you're adding in to get them engaged in your
The
story.
construction, the
That's
structure and the construction. And Tegan, that's a really good point. When I did a lot of recruiting and if someone looked down a lot, I thought number one, yes, it's a sign of nervousness, which is okay because everybody gets nervous, they're human. But it's also maybe like they're ashamed of something or they're reading something on their hand and they don't want others to see. Like a kid in school who's cheating on a maths test.
it.
So looking up is still better than looking down, but ideal is at the eye level. So, cool. Dan says that about the tool, it allows you to practice and gives you feedback on filler words, etc. So, awesome, awesome. So anything else as far as a week before? Because this is a good amount of time, a week before the D day.
I think also just checking in with your strengths is helpful. Sometimes doing that assessment, okay, look at the job description, highlight what you see is most pertinent for this job. Think about your strengths. Maybe that's when you're developing your examples. Like, how many examples do I have that are going to match up with what they want? And really kind of doing that analysis and kind of pumping yourself up, if that makes sense. Like, okay, instead of thinking about all the ways I don't match, think about all the reasons why I can do this. And also be assured, okay, they're bringing me in for this interview. So I've already checked a lot of their boxes. And just kind of doing that mindset work the week before, that's really important,
Yeah,
especially if you've had instances in the past where things haven't gone well
yeah,
and you need to really analyze, okay, what's in my control, what can I work on, I've done the work, I can do this, here's what I'm good at, bringing that to the table versus some of that baggage.
yeah, yeah. That's a very good point you made. A very good reminder. If you have been called for an interview, they already think you can do the job. You just have to prove them right. And obviously, you have to figure out if this is something you want.
Mhm.
But it's not about like being so much on the back foot and wondering why do you like me? And that's not your job to figure that out. They've already done that, and your resume worked hard on your behalf. So it's a question of now showing up. So that's a really good point about matching the job description with your strengths and having a couple of success stories
Mhm.
that relate to the problems in the job description. And every job description has problems, they just don't identify them in a very clear way. They kind of read between the lines, or they're below the surface. And if you play your cards right, you kind of have an idea what they are, whether it's on they're talking about it on Twitter, LinkedIn, social media. So you can identify how some of your strengths actually correspond, because they will love you for it. You've just made their life a little bit easier, right? Why not? Like, they'll be like, what when can you start? Like, those are the words we want.
And
So, all right, go ahead.
I find that I don't know about you, Sonal, but a lot of people, especially early in their careers, aren't really connected with their strengths. Like when you ask them, what are you good at? What are your differentiators? Sometimes they don't know. And they have a really difficult time articulating that. So I think doing the work to find those things out can really center you and help with your anxiety, because you know what you're good at. And even if you're 24 years old, if you do that work, like maybe take a Clifton Strengths Finder
Yes,
test, it
yes,
can be 20 bucks,
yes,
and do that so that you kind of know. And then it hopefully some light bulbs go off then,
yeah,
where you're
yeah,
like, okay, I've been good at this since I'm 5 years old. I've been good at managing projects. I was kind of like the leader of my friend group. And then what that looked like in college was this. And now why I'm targeting these kind of jobs, it all makes sense. And until you do that pre-work, it can be anxiety inducing, because you don't really understand, like you talked about right away, it's not in alignment. So once you kind of know that, I think it can really help. And maybe that's not fair to say a week before. Maybe that's what you're doing, the work you're doing a month or two before your interview.
yeah. No, that's very good. So, the strength part is very important. I've spent quite some time here on Supercharge Fridays talking about strengths. Do go back and watch some of those replays if you can. There are some free online strength assessment tests that you can take as well, and they give you some words. You have an idea, but they put those words, they put that down in words for you. That makes your life a little bit easier. So definitely take advantage of that. So this is sort of the I'm going to recap here, Paula. So these are the kind of 2, 3 things you can do a week before. Practice your answers as much as you can, the delivery, the content, record them on video, or you do this with someone who you trust, who is preferably not family, because they know us too well and they love us too much and they don't want to give us feedback that they think we won't like.
Mhm.
So avoidable if you can. And there are some tools out there that can help you. There's LinkedIn. Another tool was mentioned in the comments on LinkedIn. If you're watching me on YouTube, check out the comments on LinkedIn. It was called Yoodli, Yoodli. And ensure that you kind of making, you're scoping things out. You're reading the job description. Also read your resume again and again and again, because just to remember all the awesome things you did. Because they're like, so I see that you looked at this ice cream company and you did what? When did I do that? Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I have seen that happen with candidates.
Mhm.
Like, they're in a completely different headspace. So
Right.
yeah, we don't want to do that. The night before the big day, Paula, oh my God, you said pooping bricks. That's happening. It's happening. There's upset stomach. It really manifests in physical ways, the stress, right? Uh, how do we combat that? We think we're well prepared. We've done what we could, yet heart is racing a little bit. Now what?
I like to think about the visualization. So, and it doesn't just mean like a simple visualization of I want to do good here. It is really getting intricate with it. So what that means is you think about, okay, I'm going to drive there, and there might be some traffic. So I'm going to leave early, and I know where I'm going to park, and I'm going to walk in, I'm going to shake somebody's hand. I'm going to feel nervous, but I'm going to do some deep breaths, and you walk yourself through the whole thing to the point where you're like, I know I'm going to get asked, tell me about myself. I know I'm going to get asked some other challenging questions, and I've prepared for those. I know I'm going to end the interview with some questions that I have, asking them. And then at the end, I know that I'm going to be grateful and thankful, and express my eagerness to work at this company. And so, and I actually, that was truncated. I mean, I want you to really visualize that, and it might even take you, say it out loud, write it down, whatever kind of media works out best for you. And then But that visualization is long and intricate, so that your mind is going through those steps. And I think it can be really helpful to just, like, while you're in a relaxed state, think about those things, but be honest about it. There's going to be stressful points, and visualize yourself getting through that. Visualize yourself breathing, visualize yourself taking a moment to answer the questions, like if you need it, and asking for clarification if you need it, and getting super, super intricate about just how that process is going to go. And the positive things there are that you're being honest with yourself. It's not a Pollyanna thing where everything's going to be beautiful and I'm going to do whatever. Some things will be stressful and I'm going to get through it, but also mostly a positive slant where I can see myself getting through this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to look at the camera lens and I'm going to look at that person. There is always that one person who listens to words like visualization and their eyes are rolling so hard to the back of their head. They are worse than my teenage kid right now. And they're like, oh my God, seriously? Like I'm having breakfast and I like stopped driving to listen to this because visualization, you can't be safe. I'm talking to that person right now. Listen, whatever you're doing, stop it. You're walking your dog, stop. If you are like watching and listen. The thing that the technique that Paula has just described is the exact technique used by Olympic champions, an elite marathon, decathlon, triathlon, what is that thing in Hawaii? Ironman. This is what they do. And they are not, we are not saying you reach the finish line and everyone's clapping and there's flowers and beer waiting for you. We're talking about you going through the day, you're
Mhm.
going to put on your shoes, you put on your jacket, you step out. What's the perfume I'm going to be wearing? The traffic is going to be like this. By the way, let me take the other highway because that might be less. And then I reach, parking is like this. You're going through the mundane, boring detail. And 99% of the time, Paula, I don't know if you've seen this, but 99% of the time, interviews are freaking predictable.
Yes.
There's very few curveballs out there.
Yeah.
And it's not like somebody sweeps out of the blue. What would you do? Where were you on the 4th of December, 1950? Like nobody does that, right? So it's gonna be okay. And whatever they throw at you, you can handle it. They just want to see that you can handle it.
Mhm.
So even if it's a stress interview, that's a separate topic. We're not going to do that today. I've seen some stress interviews where they try to make you uncomfortable. You are like, huh? I can deal with this. I've been through worse. Like this is okay.
Mhm.
And you know, you have something called presence of mind. So you should be fine. But I love this tip on visualization, and people who huff and puff and don't like it, try it before you deny it. Please.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because it does work. It works. I've seen it personally for myself and I've seen it for my clients as well. So
I think it helps people also sometimes to think about, speaking of all the woohoo stuff here, that mindset shift of, okay, this is going to be a discussion. I'm going to go in as this is research if I want to work at this company, instead of this is an interrogation, a stress interview. They're trying to, they want you to succeed. They want you to be the answer to they want to be done after they interview you. So if you just can think about it that way from the other side, like I really could be the answer they're looking for here and they need me. And we're business colleagues having a business discussion. I know that sounds woohoo, but it is really, if you can make that mindset, I think the best people that I've worked with who are the best interviewers, that's how they go into it.
yeah. And if that's woohoo, I don't want to be logical. I want woo stuff, right? And speaking of woo, I mean, there's another technique here, and Joe is someone who's been working for a while, so he's no spring chicken here. And he says before an interview, I remember something that brought me joy,
Oh,
and then I start
love
meeting
that.
with that. It could be a sweet like family member, it could be a kid, it could be a
Right.
dog, it could be flowers, it could be tulips,
Mhm.
and I get positive energy from that memory. I love this, Joe, and I
Mhm.
want to take this one step further. I advise every single client of mine, and they roll their eyes when they listen to me, but I tell them to put on their favorite cologne. And I was telling them to do that in the middle of COVID and lockdown. They're like, "You do know, Sonal, that they can't smell me across the computer." I'm like, "Duh, yeah, I know that, but you can smell it.
Yeah.
It's for
I love
you.
that. That's
It's
great.
for you. It completely elevates your mood and shifts the entire environment and how you show up. So, very few, like, there's no perfume that stinks. There's perfumes that only like smell nice, right? So, as long as you don't go near a skunk, you should be fine. So, amazing. And Kathy says visualization is one of the most powerful interview prep tools and often ignored. So, again, try it before you deny it. I hope you can take some of these clips and post them as micro content. That's a very good tip, Mr. Content Creator. I shall definitely put that into practice. So thank you for that.
Are you
Thank you
on?
for being here. Thank you for being here. It's early morning for you. I'm sorry, Dan, you couldn't sleep the night before, but hopefully this has been worth it. So Paula, the night before, anything else we're missing?
I don't think so. I yes, probably. um, what did we miss anything?
So
No,
I'll do a quick recap for anyone who's joining us. We've been live for about 30 minutes. If you're just joining us, welcome, but highly recommend you go back and watch the replay when we're done. We're talking about interviews the week before, the night before, and the day off. Right now, we're talking about the night before. And so far, what we've covered is practicing your answers out loud, preferably record them on a smartphone if everybody has a smartphone these days. Look at your content, look at your delivery. Listen to your content, look at your delivery. Tools, there's lots of tools out there. So go back and listen to what we talked about, some AI tools that help you. And if you're using too many fillers or anything like that, it'll tell you. So fillers are normal. I think everyone uses them. I start every question, so Paula, that's okay. But if it goes like, Paula, the person doesn't get what you're saying. So obviously, watch that out. Ensure that you match job description of the position you're interviewing for with your own strengths. So you're not looking London, talking Tokyo. You're looking at the same place. And then we talked about the night before, a detailed visualization practice conducted by most elite athletes in the world, winners. So try that out as well. I think then now let's talk about the day off. Showered the night before? Paula, tell us. Showered the day off? Do you have a preference?
I think no. Are you talking about the showering? Wait, what? I need
Starting
some
with that.
clarification
You know,
here.
the day off, right? It's morning now.
I think I think here's where you know yourself the best. I find that most people kind of fall into two camps. One person needs that hype up. They need that music. They need someone to be like, "You got this," and they need to actually be like hyped up. And the other type of person needs the calm down. They might need to go for a run in the morning, a long run to really get it out. They might need to do some meditation. They might need to call their mom and really have their mom be like, "You got this, it's okay," that calming mom force, or
Yes,
someone like a mom or somebody who acts as your number one cheerleader. So
maternal.
yeah,
Yeah.
I find that that's probably the best thing of the day of is like knowing, yourself. What do you need? Do you need to listen to some music? Do you need to, run? Do you need to do something different? What do you need do you need to watch like that TED talk where she talks about like posing in the mirror, Amy Cuddy,
Yeah.
and that power visualization
Yeah.
pose. Yes, thank you. And so, I like that just to think about what you need most. I don't think we can say that for me, like for example, when I was in college, if I went to an exam 15, 20 minutes early, like you're supposed to be early for an exam. You don't want that stress of like rushing to an exam. I would get there and I'd be around all those other really nervous people and it would absolutely freak me out. So I learned pretty quickly I need to get to the exam like 1 minute before. And that's not kind of my personality. I like to be prepared, but being around all those nervous people really made me more nervous. So do what you know you need. I'm actually one of those people, even though I'm like an extrovert and I, like can get up to here. I need actually the calm before really nervous things, like a job interview.
Yeah. Yeah. And just spend some time with your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's very, very, very good. I'm glad we're talking about how different everyone is.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a client in one of the Nordic countries, and we were talking like winter. Our coaching was happening in the middle of winter, and one of the ways he would be ready would do these stupid cold. I don't know. I totally judge him. These cold plunges in the middle of winter, in the middle of freaking
Wow.
Scandinavia. But that
Wow.
worked for him. That worked for him,
Yeah.
right? So I personally think if it's something important, I think it's better if you shower the morning. You just feel
Mhm.
like there is a completely
Yeah.
different, your body's awake.
Okay, now I
Um,
see where you were going with that.
yeah. And then another thing I wanted to add here, and it's a lesson I learned, unfortunately, with my client. And we said be early, and she was. However, when we she was in Australia, and I said, go drive there so you have an idea of how long it takes. And it was a very important interview. It was very senior at a
Mhm.
hospital. And she did. And she said, oh, 40 minutes door to door. And she still went. She was still 20 minutes early. However, she didn't know that the parking was a total palaver. So she spent, not parking, I'm sorry, the GPS, and ended up
Oh,
taking her somewhere a little bit different. So she ended up walking 20 minutes. So
oh
she was on
no.
time, but she wanted to be early, but she
Yeah.
was on time. And it was, I remember it was my winter, it was her summer. So she reached completely sweating. And she said she didn't have time. She wanted to go because she'd been drinking water in the car. She had no time to go to the loo
Mhm.
because she was on time and she didn't want to ask to go to the loo. Another problem. So the lesson learned was ensure you know exactly how long it takes and where
Mhm.
the parking is, because sometimes technology can be an amazing enabler and sometimes it can be a pain in the ass and it
Mhm.
drops you somewhere god knows where.
Right, right. And that just made me think about how fortunate we are really to have virtual interviews now. And people get freaked out about virtual interviews, but there's a lot of positives, especially for people with anxiety. You can control your environment so much more easily in a virtual interview.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a candle next to you. You can't have a candle in the middle of an interview at a
Right.
Deloitte office. They'll be like a fire brigade. So that's the day off. And hype music is very cool. I think somebody else mentioned as well. I mean, I listen to Enya. It just takes me to my happy place. So do whatever works for you, whether it's music, whether it's preferably something which is not heavy, right? In content, and don't listen, like, not the best time to listen to a brand new podcast which is an hour or 2 hours long. You want it to be your mind to have a little bit less clutter.
Mhm.
And what else on the day off, Paula?
Review your information. At this point, hopefully you've got your stories kind of whittled down to some bullet points. You know the flow of them. And I like to just have I'm a visual learner, so I like to have them written down, but just the bullet points, like
Mm,
a
mm,
story about me and Karen working on XYZ project, you
mm.
know, and then you review those stories in your mind, and then you can plunk those into your different examples.
Yeah, exactly. All right, perfect. So review the information, and there is no shortcut there. You've
Yeah.
got to it's top of mind. So remember, we said, oh, so tell me about this time when you worked at this resort and you were the marketing manager. Yeah, it was a long time ago. But they asked you, so they want to know something about it, and it should feel like it was recent enough for you because you read through it. You went through the notes. Virginia's in the house. Speaking of fan club, she's right here. And Joe says, "Hey, there's a saying because Joe's a runner. The race and you practice. Trust your preparation. The hard work is in the preparation, right?
That's
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question here from Dan that I didn't. I think that I missed. And he says, "Do you focus on anxiety as a standalone, or do you work with clients on the underlying causes of anxiety?"
I do not work with clients on the underlying causes of anxiety, but I have recommended that clients see a professional for that. I just don't feel like that's in my wheelhouse, and I don't pretend that it is. And that's a great point, Dan. I believe that maybe we should have talked about that at the top of the hour, that sometimes that's what you need to start with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if you've been wronged, if you've come from a place where you have extreme anxiety because of, you know, let's say you've been terminated and it was a really bad situation and you haven't worked through those feelings yet. When you get to the interview, it's going to show.
Yeah.
And so do that work to get through that as best you can before you get to the interview phase, because if you get there and you haven't done that work, it's going to show, and it's probably going to impact your interview.
Yeah, yeah. And if you know there's a question that's coming and you don't like it, just get ahead of it, right?
Mhm.
Just be prepared for it. And I'd like to ask also the viewers here, what else has helped you? Let's learn from each other in the comments, and please connect with each other if you like someone's answers. You never know where small talk and connecting on Supercharge Fridays, you never know where it takes you. But tell us what has helped you the day off, right? Specifically, because honestly, there's no shortcut to hard work. And Paula, the other thing you said was also, I think that the stakes are high, and we know that,
Hmm.
but it doesn't help that we know that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes ignorance is bliss. And
Hmm.
when we know that, and there's a lot riding on this, you better get this, don't goof it up, son.
Hmm.
Thanks, Dad. So it's like, the shoulders are sort of a little bit heavy. Do you have any recommendation for like just, yeah, the stakes are high, but at the same time, you know?
I think sometimes we make it too much in our head. We're making this into this big, huge event, and you have to remember the times you've been there before and you've gotten through it. And also maybe thinking about it like we talked about before, reframing it. Okay, this is a chance for me to have a business discussion. I might come out of it with some research, and by that I mean if I want to work at this company, and I might come out of it with some new connections on LinkedIn and some new networking connections, and maybe you set the bar there. And then anything above that is great. I get the next interview. Okay, great. I was kind of expecting I might just get some connections out of this. So, yeah, I think just kind of maybe trying to, for some people, trying to minimize it a little bit instead of trying to like, oh my gosh, this is it. I need this job so bad. This is going to be the answer to all my prayers. And sometimes we put too much emphasis on it.
And we don't know it's going to be the answer to our prayers. We
Mhm.
don't know that. And when we put these kind of roles on a pedestal, especially with a scarcity mindset where people say, in this economy, you got an interview? Wow, that's
Right.
amazing. And like, as opposed to, oh, it doesn't matter. There'll be others. Plenty of fish in that ocean.
Right. And you are valuable. And I think that's really important to go in like, okay, I'm a valuable commodity. I do a great job solving problems. This isn't the only company that's going to work. I Yeah, like you said, scarcity. If I'm thinking this is it, that's a much different mindset than if I'm thinking, okay, I this is one of my options.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Rich. Rich has a hey, Rich. Rich has a fantastic comment here, and he's talking about that example that I talked about, that lady in Australia, and he said I would have internalized that arriving on time after the GPS fiasco was still a win-win, and
That's great.
well, ended up Rich. You're right. She ended up getting the job, but you're right. It can go either way,
Mhm.
right? We can let it affect us. We can let the anxiety manage us, or we manage the anxiety.
Mhm.
So, I have a compliment here. Rebecca says, "You look so nice, Paula."
Oh, thanks, Rebecca.
And
I
I think that what you just said, I want to just repeat this because it's worth it. I call this my BCWC scenario. In
Ooh,
French, the W is a um, WC sounds awful because in Europe, WC is, yeah, it's the it's the loo.
yeah.
But I didn't mean that scenario. We're not talking about that level of toilet, but W meaning. Um, I'm sorry, what I was saying was W in French is we, like the sound is way. So BC, we see. So WC scenario is the best case and worst case scenario.
Okay.
And you just presented that and you gave the best case scenario. There'll be another interview and I'll get another
Yeah.
opportunity to talk about myself and see if there's a match. Worst case scenario, I know one more person.
Yeah.
I know one more person. I will connect with them on LinkedIn. I will thank them for the opportunity and we will leave it there.
Yeah. I
You
learned something.
I learned
Mhm.
something, and if it didn't go well, I have validation. This is what I did well, and this is what I could have done better. I have some proof. I'm not sitting in the car. If I want to learn how to drive, I gotta get out on the highway. And this was a way to get out on the highway. So the worst case is never as bad as we think it is.
Mhm.
And I think Erin, we're too much in our head. That's so true.
Oh, that's
So
so
true.
true.
So, and if you haven't tried these things and then you're critical, be careful because you might be sabotaging yourself. So, meditation, music, exercise,
Mhm.
power poses, all of this stuff the night before or the day off, whatever it takes, be your hype person. Call the person who is your hype person. For some, it's their mom. For some, it's their dad. For some, it could be the family member says, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" And they're discouraging. Don't call up that
Right.
person the day off.
Right.
Call
Right.
up that person who
Mhm.
always has your back and who will praise you in a room of people when you're not there. And they're
Mhm.
like, "You did what? You scheduled it? Oh, you're going to be amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, you got this."
Right.
That's what you should do.
Mm.
That's what you should do. I was told there'll be no bathroom humor. Well, Virginia, my God, I am so sorry to disappoint. Yeah. Come on. She's been on LinkedIn Live twice with me. There is no way there's no toilet humor. Positive, confident mindset goes a long way. Very true, Johan. Very, very true. So, all right. We've covered quite a bit, right? So let me remove the BCWC out of the screen. So before we go, Paula, what is the one thing you would, sorry, before we let you go, are there any questions that have not been addressed? Please let us know if there's anything that you haven't seen covered. Hopefully the question about books earlier, you've got hopefully more than enough to go around and put this into practice.
Mhm.
But if there's any other questions, feel free to bring them up. But Paula, before we let you go, what is the one thing you want every single person who's watching today, who has interviews coming up and is nervous, anxious, all of that stuff? What do you want them to walk away with?
The knowledge that preparation will help minimize anxiety. So, having, like we talked about, having your mind go through those steps in the most similar situation is going to help you during that day. So I prefer a mock interview. I prefer video. Doesn't have to be somebody you pay to do that, but there are coaches who do that. And just making your brain go through that scenario so you can actually really sweat and really think, oh my gosh. And then you understand what your smoothness is and you become more comfortable with your stories. You can refine things because they've been videotaped. I think that's what will really help with anxiety the most, is just thinking more on the front end and that preparation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that, for people who don't have access, who are not able to afford a coach right now, another tool, we talked about meditation, but there are guided meditations out there to manage anxiety. And they walk you through, it could be interview, it could be anything specific, and you're very, very worried about it. And it walks you 5 or 10 minutes and it just shut your eyes and you're going through it. And then I don't know, the whole like vibe just changes. It's a lot more zen. And when you open your eyes and you're like, oh, I can do this, it's not as monstrous and scary as I thought it would be.
Mhm.
So amazing, amazing, amazing. So if you do not follow Paula yet, what are you doing with yourself? So lots of free information. In fact, Paula posted something on this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and I pounced on it, and I said, Paula, we need to talk about this in more detail. So there's plenty more where that came from. Paula's amazing. So want to say a big, big thank you for being here, and to our lovely viewers for being here and joining us and sharing your thoughts with us. And I shall see you at the same time next week on Supercharged Fridays. Take care, everyone. Wish you a lovely Friday and a lovely weekend ahead. Paula, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Sonal.